Hi guys, today I'm going to talk about my recommendations for the historical fiction readathon being organized by Shelley Swearingen, and I'll just get right into it. So my first recommendation is going to be The Pull of the Stars by Emma Donoghue, and this one is set in Ireland in 1918 while there was both the war and the Spanish flu breakout, and this one follows Nurse Julia Powers, who is a nurse in an understaffed hospital, and she is looking after pregnant women who have also contracted the flu. And then she also meets a new doctor, new female doctor, who is rumored to be chased by the police. And I read this one a little while ago, but I remember the main character is going through a period where she's feeling unhappy and a bit lost in life. And so the events of this day, which I think the whole book is set in just one or 2 days, and it's about the way that the things that happen during this day help reshape what she wants to do with her life and her outlook on things. And it also has really interesting descriptions of medical tools and practices of the time. There are descriptions of illness and childbirth, so do keep that in mind. And if you're following the prompts, this one would fit the one of the location ones. It follows an ordinary person, and there is a romance element. It is not romance genre, but there is an element. My next pick is going to be Lady Tan's Circle of Women by Lisa C. And this one is set in 15th century China. We follow Tan Yunshan, who comes from an elite family. She's being raised by her grandparents, and her grandmother teaches her the pillars of Chinese medicine. And so she's learning alongside this other young girl who is training to be a midwife, and they become really good friends. And so Mei Ling, the friend, is destined to become a midwife, but Yunshan's primary duty is to become a proper wife and mother. And so she eventually moves into her husband's family home, and these very large homes housed a lot of women who at the time could not be seen or touched by male doctors, and there were only male doctors at the time. And so there are many occasions where women are in dire need of medical attention that doctors can't properly give. And so Yunshan, having as much knowledge of medicine as she does, finds herself compelled to overstep the bounds of her station. And so we get to see a little bit of the parallels between Yunshan and Mei Ling, and the differences that their class affords them in terms of advantages and disadvantages compared to each other. And I think it's a good thing to point out that Yunshan is not a modern heroine plopped into this old world China. She is very much of her time. And so she's pushing boundaries realistically for her time. And there's also a lot of discussion of bound feet as a reality of women in high society of this time. They're discussed in detail. So caring for bound feet and the process of achieving bound feet. They're not looked at critically, they're looked at in a very measured, realistic way as they were seen as part of life at the time. And there's also going to be descriptions of illness and childbirth in here. So this one might fit the new to you time period prompt. It could also fit the extraordinary person because Tan Yunshan was a real person, a real physician in China, and she wrote a book of medicine. And then also there is a mystery element here, so you might be able to get away with including that. The next book is going to be West by Carys Davies, and this is a novella set in the early 1800s in the USA. We start out with a father saying goodbye to his young daughter as he is setting out to explore the West. He has seen that there were giant animal bones found in Kentucky, and he feels compelled to go find these giant monsters in the West, because at this time the US wasn't fully mapped. And so he believes that they're out there, and he is just obsessed with the idea of finding them. So this follows what happens to the two of them while he is away. And I really enjoyed this. I feel like I haven't been able to stop talking about this book. And so this is about what happens when we prioritize our dreams over everything else in our lives, about the things that we can and can't control in our lives, and the way that our actions affect others. And so this one could fit a location prompt, and it's also from an ordinary person's point of view. My next pick is Mothering Sunday by Graham Swift, and this one's also on the shorter side. This one is set in the UK in 1924. I think it moves back and forth in time a little bit, but it's the meat of the story takes place in 1924. And we follow a young maid working for a wealthy family. She started working there when she was 16 and she is now 22. And for most of that time, she has been having an affair with the young heir of a neighboring family. Um, so this takes place during Mothering Sunday, which was a holiday celebrating mother churches, meaning the church that one was born in. And so what that means is that servants were given the day off, and in this case, half the day off, to go to church and celebrate with their families. And of course, the rich folk cannot be trusted to fend for themselves, and so they have plans to be away from home during the time that the servants are not there. And so the house is going to be empty. And so it's all about what happens on this fateful day that ends up affecting the rest of our young protagonist's life. This book is very beautifully written. The narrative is not the most straightforward. It's almost like a puzzle that comes together as you read it, and it's very satisfying to see it all come together. And so the prompts that this one would fit are ordinary person, and there's also a mystery element in here. My next pick is The House of the Spirits by Isabel Allende. And this one might be a little bit controversial just because it's technically the third in a series, but it was published first, and I read it first because I didn't realize that it was the third in the series. It didn't affect my enjoyment because the three novels are really standalone. You don't have to read them in order, although you can if you want to, but this one's my favorite, so I don't know. I recommend this one over the other ones. The interesting thing about this series is that it started out with the author wanting to document her family history, and so this is very much based on her family history in Chile. So this is set in Chile, and it starts out in 1910, and it follows the Trueba family through many, many generations. And it's a really sprawling saga. Lots of things happen, historical events that happened in Chile. It's really brutal at times. There's also a little bit of magical realism. Yeah, it's gritty and messy, and a lot of things happen. This one's going to be more plot driven than a lot of the other books on my list as well. And this one's definitely going to be on the longer side, but I listened to it on audio, and I listened to the Spanish version, and the narrator has a Chilean accent. So that was very immersive. But for the prompts, this one would fit the magical element and also the location prompts. The next book is going to be Their Eyes Are Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. And look how gorgeous this copy is. I love it so much. And admittedly, this one might not fit everybody's definition of historical fiction because it was only set 10 years in the past at the time that it was written. So it was written in the 30s and set in the 20s. But it's a really beautiful book. It's a classic, so I give you permission. So this is set in the US South in the 20s, and it follows Janie Crawford, a 40-year-old woman who has just come back into town after being gone for a year. She meets an old friend and tells her life story up to that point. And it's just an amazing story. Janie is a really strong female character, and it's really, really beautifully written. There is dialect in here, so I do recommend the audiobook, and this one would fit the classic prompt. And my last pick is going to be Alias Grace by Margaret Atwood. This one is set in Canada in 1843, and it follows Grace Marks, who is convicted of aiding and murdering her employer and her housekeeper. And there's a group of high society people and clergy trying to prove her innocence, and so they hire a doctor, a psychiatrist. And the field of psychiatry is very new, and they want him to talk to her so that he can prove her innocence, while he is more interested in just finding the truth. And so the narrative style for this is really interesting because you'll have sections where we hear from Grace in first person. There are letters, and then there's also a third person point of view following the psychiatrist. And so the way that this develops is very interesting. And I just really enjoyed getting to know the character of Grace. She is very interesting, unreliable, and fascinating. And Grace Marks was a real person. This actually happened, where she was convicted of aiding and murdering her employer and the housekeeper. So this one will definitely fit the extraordinary person prompt. Definitely also the mystery and the location potentially. So that's it for all of my historical fiction recommendations for you guys. Let me know if any of you have read any of these and what you are reading this month, whether it is historical fiction or not. And I will see you next time. Bye.